Welcome to the Indie Opera Podcast.
We are finally releasing this episode, which was recorded in the spring of 2020 that got derailed during the start of the pandemic, and features all the composer librettist teams to receive the 2020 Opera America Discovery Grants, which support composers who identify as women in the development of new operatic works and the advancement of their careers in the opera industry.
Welcome to the Indie Opera Podcast. This is Peter.
This is Brooke.
This is Walker.
This is Chuck.
Oh, we did. That was the best we've ever done.
You planned ahead.
Now we've got a lot of guests with us tonight because we are focusing on the Opera Grants for Female Composers, which is supported by the Virginia B. Toulmin Foundation. And these are the Discovery Grants that they award each year. And this is our third time, I think, doing this show of Discovery Composer, or is it our fourth time? Chuck, do you remember? I think it's our third. And we're doing something completely different this time. We've invited all the composers, all the librettists, everyone to come join us to have a discussion about their pieces. And we're going to play little clips. And this is my favorite kind of show where we get to sort of disc jockey recordings and chat and talk about things. We're going to be very relaxed about this, and we're just going to go bring on two guests at a time and go through four of the composers. There are 7 who've been awarded grants. We're going to do a second show where we're going to do the other 3 composers. So this is a mega show. So we're going to have a discussion with each of the composers. And if you remember from our previous 2 shows previous, we had on our musicologist, Greg Mumji, who's also listened to all the pieces and sort of made little descriptions of them and comments that we want to add because we like bringing his voice into the room. So let's bring on our first 2 people. We are joined by composer, vocalist, and producer Lisa Bielawa, who lives and works in New York City, but it has built large-scale musical partnerships and projects in Berlin, Rome, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Boston, and Vancouver. She is currently at work on a major shelter-in-place participatory work broadcast from home with contributors from 4 continents. And we're joined by Claire Solomon, who is a writer and associate professor of Hispanic Studies and Comparative Literature at Oberlin College, who is a librettist for this work that we're going to discuss called Centuries in the Hours. Welcome to the show.
Nice to see you all.
Hi. So Lisa, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I live in New York City, and I've been here in my apartment mostly for around 6.5 weeks. I live a block away from the hospital, so that's most of my existence right now is that. But when
You mean the sounds of ambulances?
Oh no.
yeah,
Oh, Walker, that's dark, but true.
No, I thought that's what she meant. You mean is it overwhelming to be near the
it is
hospital?
overwhelming. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's overwhelming in a variety of ways.
Yeah.
So, but when we are living our other lives, I divide my time between being here in my apartment in New York and touring and performing and making large scale work, usually in communities and, in ways that involve and engage amateurs and students and professionals all together.
Very cool. And also with us is librettist Claire Solomon. Let me see. Can you say hi, Claire?
Hi.
Hi, Claire. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, as you mentioned, I teach literature at Oberlin College. I'm in Oberlin, Ohio right now. I'm teaching.
I went to Oberlin. I love Oberlin.
That's true. Yeah, I love Oberlin too, and it's a really fun place to teach, and we're just all really hoping that we can come back to in-person teaching soon.
And why don't you tell us a little bit about what the Centuries in the Hours, what was the inspiration for this?
Well, I had, as it turns out, I had a residency almost 2 years ago at the American Antiquarian Society, which is in Massachusetts, in Worcester, Massachusetts. They have one of the largest collections of manuscript women's writings in the country. a lot of diaries and letters of women, American women, from like the late 17th century all the way through to the early 20th century. So when I was there, I actually got a chance to see a lot of these diaries, and some of them were actually in manuscript. And I ended up getting really excited about the prospect of discovering these women throughout American history. I ended up reading around 72 American diaries, and I was actually working on a piece that was co-commissioned by the River Oaks Chamber Orchestra, ROCO, in Houston, and ASCAP, the ASCAP Foundation. It was for mezzo-soprano Lori Rubin, and I was only able to set the words of around 5 of these amazing women, which means that there were so many others that I wasn't able to engage with, and that made me really sad. And so Claire and I started talking about this with Lori, and it ended up becoming clear to us that there was some way in which Claire, who's a novelist, and really understands story and weaving together story and character, that it would be a great opportunity to kind of just see what magic she could work with these women's writings. So that's how it started.
And Claire, was it difficult to narrow things down to one concise? I mean, there's the libretto is very concise and tight. How was the process on that?
For me, it was just a delight. I love collaborating with Lisa. She's a ferocious intellect in addition to an amazing artist. And so we just, I think, have a really good time working together. It's fun. And there was something strangely empowering about the constraint of having to tighten a unified story arc to create a sort of epic female hero who was a composite character. I found it to be a challenge that was very freeing in a strange way.
I must say, I really love the sound world you guys have created and the feeling of this piece. Let's take a little watch of a little bit. I'm going to play some of the video. And you'll notice the singer is blind and is reading from a Braille musical score, which I'm completely curious to know more about. But it's really just a wonderful thing to see someone doing that. I find it very exciting. I want to say that conducting here is Mei-Ann Chen, very exciting, very prominent conductor, I should say. I actually got to see her conduct at the Philharmonic. Very dynamic, very interesting, and it's a real coup you got her involved. I think she's a wonderful musician. So let's play a little bit of this and talk about it after.
Let me only in the fear of God put on these pages what shall transpire in my poor life. How bitter cold it is tonight. Shall we freeze to death? Below zero this morning. I'm growing colder. I'm growing colder. The wind blowing perfect air. Everything is blowing away. Something rolling. Birds flying. by the stake on the stone. We are so poor, can we ever get a house of so many? Yet everything seems to stop me. I have tried for 3 days to go, cannot get started. Everything I do seems to stand
Oh my God, that was great.
Thanks.
That was so wonderful. And I mean, it's not my first time watching it, but it gives me chills, the sound world you've created. And I think that Lori is just fantastic.
No.
What a great voice.
Lori's tremendous talent. She's a tremendous talent.
Yeah.
How did you meet her? Were you looking for a blind singer, or did you know her already?
I met her in the Dawn Upshaw, John Harbison Young Composer Singer program in 2003. I was one of the composers and she was one of the singers, and we were not paired up with each other. And we looked at each other the whole time, green with envy for the people that we were paired up with, because we really wished that we were working together. And so we just sort of kept an eye out for opportunities to work together since then. I gave her a major role in my opera that my opera that I created for television, episodic television series the last few years. She had a major role in that, called Vireo, the Spiritual Biography of a Witch's Accuser. And that was produced by LA TV station KCET. It came out in 2017. You can still watch it if you want to watch opera, when you're stuck at home. You can watch Vireo, and she plays the role of the witch and the voice in that. So I've worked with her for years, and she and I came up with the idea to work with Rocco together. We spoke to Alicia Lawyer, who's their artistic director. The three of us wanted to do a project together, and so we proposed this one.
Ask a question about, in your statement, you say it was designed with a conductorless orchestra in mind. What does the conductorless aspect add to the production? Well,
Lori is blind,
yeah.
So she can't see a conductor. So the concept of having the piece conductorless puts Lori in a position of leadership.
Is there a meaning to it though, like in the piece, or is it just a?
Well, Lori is an expert in non-visual musical communication.
Mm-hmm.
And so rather than having this performance situation be one in which she is at a disadvantage because she can't see the conductor, I wanted to create an environment where she was at an advantage because she has such a highly developed skill set of non-visual musical communication.
I just love the sound that you create, and this orchestra is fantastic.
Yeah, they're terrific.
Yeah, now let's give them a little credit here. It's the River Oaks Chamber Orchestra.
Rocco. Yeah.
Rocco. And do you have a relationship with them? Do you often work with them?
Yeah, they're this Sunday, they're going to be rebroadcasting, live streaming the concert on Facebook Live at 2 Central, 3 Eastern time, and I'm going to be online, and Lori will probably be there too, and we'll be there to sort of, comment and chat.
And how did you meet Claire? How did this come together between the two?
Claire and I met through Jennifer Coe, violinist that I've worked with a lot. And
I think I know Jennifer.
Yeah, so Jenny, I was working on, I just took a walk with Jenny this morning. She lives in my neighborhood. So we'd walked 6 feet apart from each other and talked to each other on our phones while we were walking. But Claire and I met because Claire was visiting Jenny in New York less than a year ago. And, I was in the neighborhood and we got together, and Claire and I struck up a friendship because she's so super smart and I love her writing so much. And she didn't run away when I said, "Oh, you're a writer, you have a novel, I'll read it." She didn't find me overeager. So
and Claire, is this your first libret, like something to be sung? I know you're a novelist. Is this the first time you've done something dramatic, or how's?
Yes, it's my first libretto, so it's super exciting for me.
How is it different than writing for being a novelist? Like, was it a huge challenge or?
Yes and no. I mean, I'm sure that I will continue to find all kinds of things that need to be improved. It's like I don't know enough yet to know what else I still have to do. But what's different is that writing a novel is such a solitary process, and I was so used to working that way. And as an academic, you know, that's scholarship is very solitary. And I thought of myself as an intensely collaborative person. But I remember over a dinner with Lisa, I remember Lisa said to me, "You're a beginner at collaboration." Really true. I was like this weirdo, like solitary writer academic who thought I was I was like an indoorsy, nerdy, introverted kid thinking I was really extroverted. And I had no idea how collaborative the process of writing a libretto could be. So it actually has been pure delight for me.
But Claire's a natural collaborator. She may be a newbie, but she's a natural.
Very cool. Well, thank you guys so much for being on the show. I think this is an exciting piece, and
thank you, Peter.
I think this is a really cool collaboration.
Peter,
Yes.
can I add Greg's thoughts?
Oh yes, we have Greg's thoughts. Oh, yes, let's put it in there.
So this is Chuck reading for Greg. So Greg wrote that what he heard of Centuries in the Hour, an extremely colorful opera. I say that because the composer Lisa has a knack for using instrumental combination and textures to bring out a wide variety of colors from the orchestra. In this way, it is very reminiscent of the painterly quality of Bartók's Bluebeard's Castle, where the orchestration must reflect sudden changes in atmosphere every time Judith opens another door in the castle.
Wow, Greg.
I feel like Greg has like upped the quality of our commentary significantly since he started contributing. We're like, yeah, we like it. And he has all these great references, and we're like, yeah.
I just had one more question. Claire,
Yeah.
Claire, would you consider yourself an opera fan, or is this sort of your first interaction with opera?
I mean, it's certainly my first interaction on the creative side of opera. I'm certainly a fan of new music, and I'm a fan of opera, you know, from the audience side. Absolutely.
Claire's being modest. She's actually a trained classical pianist, so she's very musically literate as well.
So, well, thank you guys so much for being on the show.
Thank you,
Thank you for
Peter.
sharing
Thanks,
this, and congratulations on
you.
winning this grant.
Thank you so much.
And I hope it takes you on to apply for another one of the great grants that's at Opera America. So it can move.
Okay.
Do it. All right. Thank you so much.
Since recording this episode, Lisa Bielawa's Centuries in the Hours was presented as a from-home work-in-progress performance, presented by Kaufman Music Center, May 27th, 2021. The work culminated in Bielawa's 2021 KMC Artist-in-Residence appointment. Lisa is collaborating with Claire Solomon again on the opera, La Balloniste, which is based on the life of Madame Elizabeth Thibault, the first woman to journey in a balloon. And Claire Solomon has continued her work as an associate professor of Hispanic Studies and Comparative Literature at Oberlin College. She is currently at work on a novel about higher education, and is collaborating with composer Lisa Bielawa on their second opera, La Balloniste.
So now we're joined by Johanny Novarro, who is a Puerto Rican female composer whose music has performed in the US and internationally, and Jose Felix Gomez, who is an actor, stage director, and writer, retired drama professor, University of Puerto Rico, and former member of Teatro del Sistema, Inc. Welcome to the show.
Really excited to be here.
I really love the work, the sample that you sent us. Tell us a little bit about the work that you won this grant for.
So yeah, that opera is Frenesí. That was actually the first collaboration that I did with Jose Felix. So right now I'm composing. I'm still finishing the opera that I won the grant for a reading, so we can hear the opera for the first time. So I'm still working on that. But the example that I sent, the excerpt, is Frenesí. It's a story based on the few chapters of Don Quixote de la Mancha from Miguel de Cervantes. So that was my first project, like writing an opera. So that's basically the first collaboration with Jose Felix.
So Jose,
Yep.
tell us a little bit about yourself. So whose idea was it to first, let's talk about Farinesi. Was this your idea, Johanny, or Jose?
All the ideas are from Johanny. She gives me the idea, then from that I move from that point on.
So let's set up this clip a little. This is scene 3 of the opera. Tell us a little bit about what's happening in this scene before we
So right now we have Lotario and Camila. So we have a love triangle and a classic love triangle. So we have Lotario, Anselmo, and Camila. And Anselmo, it's like he's this guy, powerful guy, and he's drinking for his friend Anselmo, and he says like, Anselmo says like, Lotario, can you try to make my woman, my wife, love you? You know, I want to try her love. I want to like figure it out if she really loves me or if she's married with me, just for married.
Yeah, I know.
And
This
his friend Lotario, yeah, you know, like
this is like a Mozart opera, right?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's it.
Like,
you know,
here, maybe
yeah, so
funny.
classical. And,
Yeah,
and
why is it that men this is sort of this men's fear that their wives don't love them, so they set them up in these horrible situations, take their best friend and say, see if you can seduce my wife.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, we still don't know, and actually set up so good on stage that, you know, we keep doing that. So yeah, that basically what happens. Lotario says at first no, they have a very confrontation, and then Lotario actually like, I will do it. And actually they did it. They fell in love with each other, and it's like this amazing love. And at the end, you know, very tragically, Anselmo, like, he commits suicide. Lotario died in the war, and then Camila is left alone. So nobody wins. And actually, that's what we took about Miguel de Cervantes in Don Quixote, because Don Quixote is telling this story about the curious impertinent, and we took that, like the whole idea of the love triangle, the names, and how the story developed, and we put that in the stage. So that's the scene that we're gonna do is like the love scene.
Exactly. What happens in this scene?
They're, you know, saying to each other that they were wanting this love forever, and they finally did it, and they feeling so great about love and everything. So there's like very happy and loving music, like as possibly I can do. So it's love scene. It's basically a love scene, a traditional love scene.
So why don't we take a listen to that so the audience can share some of this, and then we'll talk some more.
Oh
That was your first opera?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was it like working with Jose?
It's amazing, you know. I get these ideas about what should, you know, let's do an opera about this. And then I just call him and say, hey, Jose, I have this nice idea. Can we make it an opera? Like, can we try? And that was our first collaboration. It went really, really great. You know, in my case, I was like experiencing about, you know, structure, about sound, about especially story, you know, how to take this idea of the drama and this just lay up through the whole score. And we did our second collaboration with an opera called Redemption, that it hasn't been premiered yet. It's supposed to be premiered actually next week in Italy, but you know, whatever cause, so it was canceled. And then we have the third chance to make a collaboration, and we're doing that with the new opera, Y los Pasteles. So it's really great. You know, I feel like the collaboration process is very easygoing. You know, I just have this idea, I call him, and we continue to talk about things that we can do, that we can't do, and he's very open to stuff. Like when I say I can't have this word, I can this section. Can we move this a little bit, and can we work around this idea? And it's very, very. I love working with Jose. I know, I love it. Yes.
Jose, tell us a little bit about yourself. So you've written theater pieces as well as opera. Tell us a little bit about your experience writing these works.
Writing this, Frenesí basically is a story by Miguel Cervantes. So we just took the structure, the plot, and the characters, and then we sort of filled in the scenes that Johanny and I wanted in a way. And then the tough part of working with Frenesí was, you know, keeping sort of the verse, the poetic image, the rhythm of the Renaissance literature in Spain. Anyway, but Los Pasteles, which is the beef pie, it's a typical dish we eat in Christmas, and if there's no beef pie, there's no party. You cannot have a party without that. It's like a comic. It's like a buffa opera. It's different. It's very light, and we are trying to integrate our traditions, our cuisine, and also the sort of the conflict between the new generation and my generation. Lola, see, that's my name. Lola. No. It's fun. She's very open, and I was a professor for 36 years, and I keep telling her, no, back to the structure. Okay, what does she want? Does she achieve it? No, well, we have to do something with that. And then she composes, and then it's fantastic when I listen to the music, because then I get her feeling of what I write, and the way she turns it into sound and music, and it's been for me great. It's something that I've never done as I call myself not an actor. I call myself like a theater person.
Right, and you know, we should feed in Greg's comments too. What did Greg have to say?
Sure. So he said, listening to Johanny Novarro's and Jose Felix Gomez's opera Frenesí, there's something about the way she writes for the voice that reminds me of Puccini.
Yes.
Perhaps something it is in the melodic contour of the opening aria and the way it interacts with the orchestra. Additionally, judging from the very somber yet emotionally charged use of the orchestra in the opening, you can see that she has a great sense of how to write for the theater, which in itself is very much like Puccini. And I myself found the orchestration stunning and also very Puccini-esque, that there was a real play between the voices and the orchestra, and the orchestra was underpinning silent moments, what emotionally was happening, that then was brought back into the voice.
Totally agree. The first thing I thought was, first of all, the story is like a Puccini opera. The first thing I thought when I read it, but yeah, it has that sort of dramatic, romantic sound. Now let's talk about the upcoming project. What is it called again?
Y los Pasteles.
And tell us a little bit about, is that the same kind of a romantic story or?
No, actually it's very, very different opera. So as Jose Felix explained, we have these pasteles, very traditional
Right.
in our Christmas traditions. So we go out in a party, in a fiesta, we go and there's pork roast. We have arroz con gandules, that rice with pigeon's peas, and we have like potato salad, and we have los pasteles. That is like a it's very it's like a tamal, when the tamales from Mexico. So it's kind of closer to that in the description. So in this opera, you have this great empowered young woman just finishing her degree, and he's out to the mountains, the rural area, to celebrate Christmas. And when she came to her house, I was like, Mom, I want to do a party, a fiesta, invite everyone. We have like a big Christmas party. And her mom was like, there's no pasteles this year because the woman who made the pasteles, like, she's dead. So nobody in the barrio, in the street has pasteles, so there's no fiesta. So the whole opera is that, it's like this young, crazy people just trying to figure out where to get pasteles, because they need to find someone that can do the pasteles. And that's like a tradition for the old people. And this is about food, about Puerto Rican music. It's about traditions and cultures, very culture. So, we have this great character, Chica, and she's forced to make important decisions about her life and about her future in the whole opera. So there's a part in the whole opera that it's amazing how Jofe did it. So she said like, "Nací para ser libre." I was born to be free. So that's the kind of it's very light comedy, but it's a very empowering people, empowering this great young woman that's she's fighting for her country, fighting in the same for Puerto Rico, and all the chaos that we have with the economy and everything, and the traditions, the culture, society. She's gonna face every aspect of society, role of a woman, and she will do whatever she want to do. I don't want to hold the end on everything, but the whole thing about that.
Is there a miracle at the end? Is it like the miracle of the fishes? There's suddenly
no.
No miracle.
No machine of the gods. No.
No angel comes down with the plate of food.
Ex machina. I love
it. She find it. So
Pastel es machina.
I love that we need more operas about food. I love this. I think this is great. Like food is so much, especially now. Like the only thing I think about is food because it's the only thing. It's like the only thing I can do because I can't leave my house. So it's like, where am I going to get food? How am I going to make food? What am I going to make today?
And it's great that it's a comic opera as well. We need more comic operas.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's a very light opera, It's like we see this crazy story that's like, what? Pasteles. But for here, our tradition is very important to have pasteles in a fiesta. It's like, wow, what's she gonna do? It's
like the frosting, of the opera. The pasteles is the motif. The whole story is about Chica, this young woman. She's a very empowered woman, and she falls in love with a guy which is totally the opposite of what she wants. And she's trying to decide whether she should follow him or just keep being herself. And then she falls in love with another guy, the same too. She's a very strong woman. And at the end, she decides, no, I'm going to be me. Whoever wants to be with me has to love me the way I am. In opera and all that, but that's the basics.
It's a good message. It's a better message than the other opera.
Oh yeah, definitely.
The lead role was inspired in Johanny. It's her. She can be my granddaughter, really. I've seen her grow, and I watch her, and she's a strong woman, and she has a lot of melodies. We were speaking one night. I said, Johanny, I cannot go to sleep because all the characters are speaking to me in the evening inside of my head, so I have to get up and write down. And she says the same thing happens to me. The music just keeps flowing. It's really great. It's fun.
I'm so excited, and I'm so hungry.
If you have time sometime, come down to Puerto Rico. Our Christmas begins after Halloween, and it ends right before St. Valentine's Day. It's like a 2-month party.
It's crazy.
It's fun, really. It's fun.
We love
Wait
to
a
party,
second. Did I misunderstand? Your Christmas starts in February?
No, it starts at the end of October, runs way through February.
Oh.
We have like a carnival in Old San Juan. It's called Las Fiestas de la Calle San Sebastián.
I'm a big fan of.
We like to. We have fun down here. Besides being closed now, have fun.
Is opera popular in Puerto Rico?
No,
Actually,
but you
yeah.
have to make it popular. You can be sure.
Popular, but yeah, we have a few companies here, and I have been honored. I did my premiere of Frenesí in Washington D.C., and I presented 2 times Frenesí in Puerto Rico. So it's like, we're trying to make new opera, also like doing new opera. But there are a few companies that, once a year, like every year, they try to make like a big production and everything. But everything with the cost and, the fiscal situation of Puerto Rico is very complicated. But I've been, honored to have the opportunity. And I think this opera is going to be, a blast because it's thematic. Everyone can go to the theater and see something very different. Opera, you expect like a love triangle, and you expect something like Frenesí, and then it's like, no, we're talking about pasteles and a fiesta and a lot of people drinking and having fun on stage. Like, it's very different. So we are hoping that that can expand the masses, of opera in terms of Puerto Rico, and the opportunity to present opera in Puerto Rico.
That's great.
Very cool. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. This has really been a treat.
Thanks for having us.
And thank you for joining us from Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Miracles of technology.
Yes.
And thank you, Lola, for joining in as well in the background.
Friends.
Thanks.
Since recording, Johanny Novarro has been resident artist at ALT and was featured in an Opera America Meet the Composer video on April 12, 2021. She received a scholarship to the Puccini International Opera Composition course held in Lucca, Italy. The opera Y los Pasteles is scheduled for performances in July 2022 at Fine Arts Center Luis A. Ferrer René Marquez Theater Hall, San Juan, Puerto Rico. Johanny's music was also featured during the Backstage Brunch 2022, Empowering Women in Opera on April 9th. And librettist Jose Felix Gomez has been acting in new films, including Picando Alante and El Quinceañero de mi Abuela.
And now we're joined by composer Milica Paranosic, who is the artistic founder and executive director of the Peracademia Center, Inc., a nonprofit for music and multimedia supporting immigrant women, and Cheri Magid, who is the librettist and co-creator of Penelope and the Geese, and an assistant arts professor of dramatic writing at NYU Tisch. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Tell us a little bit about Penelope and the Geese.
Penelope and the Geese is a first collaboration for Cheri and I. It is my 4th attempt to write an opera. The previous 3, the previous 3 all started wonderfully, and then something happened in each one of the instances. So this one is not going that way. It's going really well, and we have started working on it 2.5 years ago about. And that was when we were both part of an amazing workshop and residency with a new dramatist called Composers and Librettists. And we were paired, it was a larger group. It was 5 composers, 5 librettists, and 5 singers. And then everybody had to create with everybody. And Cheri and I were matched at one point, and we were given a bunch of things to address. We were given an assignment. And then Penelope came out of that. The assignment was to take a story that everybody knows, but tell it in a different way. So we were sitting in the room talking about it, and Cheri was like, hey, I have an idea. Cheri, go.
Well, the new translation, Emily Wilson's translation of the Odyssey had just come out. And so I had been thinking about the parody, the lack of parody between Odysseus. Like what someone said to me, that the Odyssey is a great love story because Odysseus, all he wants to do is come home. And I'm like, how could it be a love story? He's basically having sex with anything that isn't nailed down while she's like weaving and unweaving and waiting, and like, how is that a love story? And so I've also often thought about, you know, people whose husbands are soldiers and disappear, and like, what are they supposed to do? Just stop their life. So we had like 36 hours to write a song, and so I said, okay, I've always been annoyed at this disparity. What if Penelope has actually had all these lovers, and instead of the funeral shroud that she's been weaving and unweaving, she's actually been creating this blanket made from locks of hairs of all her lovers. And Odysseus comes home from the war, and he falls asleep under this blanket, and Penelope cuts off a lock of his hair and wonders, where should she weave this hair into this tapestry? So the first song we wrote was just like a list of all of her lovers and what they had given.
Not all of them.
Not all of them, but there were a lot of lovers.
Several.
There were a lot of lovers, because it was a 7.5-minute song.
7.5 minutes worth of
lovers. But when we presented it, everybody was like, that's an opera. You need to expand it. So that was the jumping off point.
So tell us a little bit about the clip we're about to hear.
That section shows a little bit of an episode of one of the lovers that she had. So basically the way that it goes, it has a lot of the lovers and the encounters, explanations, and the descriptions of, you know, what she learned and what all the lovers have how they changed and influenced her life. And then there are different intersection and interjection of other female characters in the opera who are goddesses, friends, demi-goddesses, explainers, slaves, and basically they have a modular role, and they play a lot of other people in the story. So you are seeing one of the lovers or part of one of the lovers episodes, and then a song by 12 slaves.
That was really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic.
It's also, I like the fact that it's very compact. Is that the full orchestration, right?
So yes and no. It's not full and it's a little inaccurate, but it's also the size is the same. So you see the keyboard player triggering harp samples. That's going to be an actual harp. So there's not going to be any piano, and then the flute is there, and it was there, and it will be there, and then there was a cellist. So that's the core instrumentation, but it's also, each instrumentalist also will play an old version of the instrument of that kind. So there is a lyre, there is a Greek lyre that the harpist will play occasionally. There is Greek aulos, they will be alternating with the flute, and then there is a Serbian gusle, which the cellist is going to play as well. And gusle is like, the other two people might be more familiar with, but gusle is a Serbian instrument that is made and it was used for accompanying epic poetry back in the day, in the 16th century and before, in Balkan countries. And I have an instrument and it's my favorite. I've been like loving it all my life, but I'm happy to put it to use for larger community. And it's not very common, like people don't really make them anymore except selected families. Now it's coming back a little bit, but the interesting fact about that instrument is that it's not supposed to be played by women.
Oh.
It's just for guys, for dudes to play and tell stories about heroes while women make bread, I think, or something. I guess cookies after dinner. So we're just putting it back on stage and giving it into hands of women. And I've played it to help our cellist at that time, and I'm still fine. Nothing happened to me.
So is Odysseus actually in this, or is it all women?
He's under the blanket. He's asleep.
So he never actually sings.
He's going to wake up at the end of the opera to just hear Penelope's last final statement in the opera, which is, I have something to tell you, but he doesn't get to speak.
So we don't get to witness the dramatic scene.
He's exhausted. He's been traveling. He's been having a lot of sex and a lot of fights. And then he came home, had dinner, had sex again. He's going to pass out.
Melissa keeps joking that if we have a low budget, we just substitute a sack of flour for Odysseus and put him under the blanket. We don't need an actor.
But if we have a big budget, we're gonna get like Brad Pitt or somebody really famous, and
who doesn't get to speak.
Exactly, he's still under the blanket.
Well, it's a great idea to use the old versions of the instruments. I think that's I've never heard of that before. That's really interesting.
Thank you. Well, that's our way of trying to say that, you know, that was an old story, but it's not an old story. It's just a story that we keep retelling in different ways, and you know, it's very much a contemporary story still. So
is it hard to find people who can play that instrument, or I mean, for, you know, I guess
yes and no. My flute, our flutist Margaret Lancaster, plays like all sorts of wind instruments with bravado. Like, she's really great with that, and she's also a very good stage mover and interpreter. She's an actor and tap dancer as well. Mia, our harpist, is a harpist, and I found her. I was just looking for a harpist, and I talked to a bunch of people, and then she just ended up being. She was just looking to get herself a lyre for her own performances, because she also has, I think she has like 12 harps, but she didn't have a lyre at that time. So she was looking to get one, and she eventually ended up commissioning people, makers from Greece, to make her one in the true fashion of the old ones. So she was actually looking for another way to validate her need to have and buy an instrument. So that's how we met. And like, that must mean something. That must mean that this is a, you know, a good choice, and indeed it was. And then the gusle and the cellist who plays the gusle, that's still, actually, we haven't really done that yet, but I wrote it in a way that I believe any cellist will be able to do it.
I want to get Chuck's comments in here, and I have a question for Cheri as well. So
sure. Well, here's Greg's. And he found this piece very reminiscent of bel canto opera, and especially the works of Bellini. I'm a mixed bag there, but I mean, it is the chamber orchestration, exposed vocal lines create a sense of unending melodiousness. Yet there's also great use of Sprechstimme, especially in times when soloists interact with the chorus. This hybrid of dramatically spoken and sung text gives the work an added depth.
Oh, he brings such
Do we get to
gravitas.
use these?
I know, right? We need
Yeah, I know.
that.
Do we get to use these quotes?
apply for
I
We
would
can
Olympics.
send them
love
around,
it.
sure.
I can
totally
send
like
them, yes.
learning
Yes.
about it. Thank you.
So, Cheri, tell me a little bit about the language. It really felt, there's so many Greek plays. You go and see the translations. There's new translations for them, but they always have a certain cadence to them, the language.
Mhm.
And listening to that, I'm getting the same sort of feeling. What did you do when writing the libretto? Is there a certain rhythm pattern or something that you were sticking to, or what did you do?
So you have to understand that what happened is we were going to apply for a grant, and we thought we only needed like 10 pages of the libretto. And then in 12 days before it was due, we realized we needed the whole thing. And so Melissa was like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And I'm like, it's okay, I'm going to go do it. So like, I wrote it in a fever dream. I think I wrote it in like 5 days. And what I was doing was reading Emily Wilson's translation at the same time that I was writing. So I would read a little, I would write a little. Any like phrase or rhythm that struck me, I wrote it down, and I just melded it that way. So I don't know. I mean, I'm a playwright, so I'm already attuned to writing rhythmically, but I'm sure that her rhythms got in my head. She wrote it in iambic pentameter, even though, it's traditionally dactyl hexameter. So some of that, I'm sure, just got in my body.
So you're in a fever dream.
It was a total fever dream. It was like when I finished it, I couldn't believe it actually hung together and made sense. I mean, it's actually a great way of writing. Although it's very hard on the heart and gut and sleep, but I think it feels of a piece because I wrote it like that.
So how was it working together with Milica? Was there a lot of changes, or was it just sort of go with the flow? How was the collaboration?
It was, I mean, like, this has been such an extraordinary collaboration for both of us. We didn't really know each other. We ended up like at residencies, living together, where you just don't know how it's going to go. But yeah, I mean, I think that what really worked is we talked a lot about the libretto before I wrote it, and then we talked a lot about the libretto after I wrote it. And then the way both of us created it is we sort of collaged it, meaning I did not write the beginning through the end. I would write a section, and then I'd write another section that I thought were in pairs. And then Milica, when she wrote the music, she started doing the same thing. I don't know if we worked
and not in that order.
Not in that order, not in the same order. But I think that because we were working that way, we sort of innately understood the way each other were working. And I also feel like I understand that like sometimes we're going to need to move words around. So I felt like if Milica made the choice to move some words around, I was like, yes, that works, unless like it changed the essential meaning, and then we would talk about it and we would rework it. But one thing that Milica says that I think is really great is like, I looked at the Emily Wilson translation and made a translation of the translation, and then it went to her and she made a translation of my translation that was a translation. So there was always like it's like a sourdough starter. It's just like there was still an essential thing that went from person to person to person. So
yeah, I mean,
really
that's basically that's the history of the Odyssey, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that fits very well with Homer and the whole oral tradition. So
yeah,
that's wonderful that you passed it back and forth like that, and with other writers, and it's terrific.
Very cool. Well, thank you guys so much for bringing this to us. I'm really excited to hear more about the future of this project.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Since our recording, Milica Paranosic wrote a full score for North of Boston, M4M, a new solo harp piece written for Mia Theodoratos. Excerpts from the opera Penelope and the Geese were featured on Opera America's New Works Forum in January 2021. And an overview of the opera will be presented at the Archaeological Institute of America's annual meeting. Penelope and the Geese will have performances October 2022 at UNAM's El Aleph Festival in Mexico City. And Arpa Viva Records will release the audio recording of Penelope spring of 2022. Librettist Cheri Magid is currently writing a fiction podcast for Sarah Jessica Parker's company and Audible UK. She also wrote for the Emmy Award-winning children's television show, Arthur.
And now I'd like to welcome Mary D. Watkins, who is a classically trained composer, arranger, performer, and recording artist based in Oakland, California, who has written 3 operas and composed music for theater companies, choral groups, films, and symphony orchestras, as well as for chamber and jazz ensembles, and by Martha Richards, who is the founder and executive director of Women Arts, formerly known as the Fund for Women Arts. She has been working with Mary D. Watkins on the development of the opera Dark River on 2 earlier versions as well. Now, Martha, you're like a producer in this case because Mary is both composer and librettist.
Yes.
In this case.
For this opera, yeah.
Well, this is very exciting. Mary, tell us a little bit about this piece.
Okay, this was inspired by a book I read. It's a historical piece, and it's about the civil rights movement in the 1960s in Mississippi. And I read a book by Taylor Branch called Parting the Waters, and it was just a chronicle of in fact, there were 3 volumes covering that whole period, and this was the first volume. And I was so fascinated by that book. I mean, he's an excellent writer of history. And I thought then, and this was many, many years ago, I thought, God, some of this would make a great opera. And what made me think of opera, I think, well, there was a lot of drama, to be sure. And I was interested in it. I mean, I was living at the time in Washington, D.C. And the spirituality of the movement and the heroism of the people involved in that movement. And so, I don't know if I'm getting off track, but it was that book that inspired the idea of an opera. And I went to a workshop for composers and playwrights, singers, and met someone who was also interested in doing opera. And so we did an opera called Queen Clara, and it was about the Red Cross and Clara Barton, who was the founder of the Red Cross. And at that point, I had never really thought that much about writing opera, but I was so fascinated by the experience of writing that I thought, I'd like to continue it. So I wrote this, I wrote the music and he wrote the libretto. And after that, I felt ready to tackle the idea of Dark River. And this is many years later.
Right.
And
so you're your own librettist, which I always think is a dangerous idea.
I thought it was too.
Yeah. I always think that the idea of having the composer be the librettist is you're not bouncing ideas off of an opposition. And sometimes that tension creates interesting new things. So how did you work on this? Did you do both the libretto and the music at the same time? Did it all come to you? How did that work?
No, I was trying to find someone to work with, and it ended up that there was we had a night of works in progress, and I still hadn't found a librettist. And so I ended up writing the libretto to a couple of the scenes myself. And I liked the way it turned out. And so I decided, I don't know, somewhere along the way, I just decided to go ahead and do it. I was writing sort of the outline and the ideas that I wanted to see expressed in this opera. So I was told that this was not a good idea. I shouldn't do this. You're not a writer, you're a composer. And I agreed, but somehow or another, I found myself doing it, and it was a great experience. I wrote the whole libretto. I wrote, that was the story, and it was based on fact. And so it wasn't really, I didn't have to invent anything.
Right.
It was there. It was history. And so I wrote all of that out, and some of it I've never really tried poetry, but some of it was more poetic than other parts. But after I'd finished, I went back and I just began to set it to music. I didn't find it to be that difficult.
So let's ask Martha a little bit. So now you were inspired to get this produced?
Yes, what happened was I was a longtime fan of Mary's work because she's composed in a variety of different styles, and I'd seen her perform and had some of her recordings from many years before. So I loved her work anyway, and then there was a production in Oakland by the Oakland Opera Theater back in 2009 that was the very first sort of workshop production of the piece. And I was just blown away when I saw it. I mean, I went because actually I saw Mary's name in the paper and said, I didn't know she wrote opera. And so I went, and sure enough, there she was. And it was a beautiful piece. And I was so moved by the story. I think, as you pointed out in one of the earlier comments, that the roles for women in opera are so often, she's a tragic love heroine and she either dies at the end or she marries some idiot that you think that might be actually worse than death. So this is a very unusual piece because it features an African-American woman who was very heroic, who was working, actually poor woman who, self-taught and became a leader of the civil rights movement. I think the thing Mary often says is she's so struck by the dignity that people move through that, participated in that movement with so many barriers and obstacles, and yet Fannie Lou Hamer was beaten repeatedly. She was given a very, very hard time and experienced sexism as well as sexism within the movement as well as racism from the outside. So she's a very complex and wonderful character, and I was just so happy to see her realized on stage. So I wanted to get it. So I immediately said to Mary, let's try and work something out so that we can produce this. So that's how it started.
So let's listen to a little piece of it. Tell it what's happening in Pap's song.
Fanny has just been asked to leave the plantation because she attempted, along with several other people, to go to the courthouse in Indianola, Mississippi, to register to vote. And when she got back home from this trip, because she lived in Ruleville, I guess about 40 miles from there, she found out that the people at the courthouse had notified the Sheriff Marlowe, whose plantation she lived on. And she was told she had to go remove her name from the list of registries, or she would have to leave the plantation. And that was their livelihood, she and her family. And so she chose, and the family chose, for her to not remove her name from that list, and that she would then leave the plantation that night. But they did go through a bit of, back and forth about whether or not it was safe for her to do this or she should do it. Anyway, Pap finally decided that, yes, this was the better thing to do. And so he sang this love song to her. I mean, the family, she had 2 daughters and she was going to leave them. And he wanted her to know that he supported her and that he loved her anyway.
I guess this is why I love you. My strong-headed, beautiful Fanny. One who stands firm in her beliefs. Compelling, fascinating one. Full of life and destined to lead. Fanny Lou, oh my sweet woman, you are a soul of kindness, with the heart of a Without you, what would me and the girls do? I want you safe at home when no one can harm you. So do what you got to do. Yes, the beautiful one. I guess that's why I love you. I guess that is why I love you.
One thing I wanted to say about Pap's song, I mean, Fannie Lou had just gone to be one of the very first people in Mississippi to register to vote. And so that's why everyone was so angry at her, I mean, at the landlord and so on. And I think what I love about that song, it's one of the few songs I know of in opera where a man is singing to a woman that he loves her because she's hard-headed and stubborn and that she's going to do what she has to do. You just don't see that. And it's just so heartwarming to see a man actually expressing those feelings to a woman and recognizing that she has a strong personality and that she needs to live her life.
She's not glamorous, and neither is he, but he loves her.
Right. I think we should put in Gregory's comment here. So what did Gregory Mumji have to say?
Sure. He talks specifically about Fanny's song,
okay,
which he has the feel of a romantic aria in the lush vein of Verdi. Think of the Cantiluna or Plebe Patrizi Popolo from Simon Boccanegra. However, of course, the orchestration is very Copland-esque in the sense of Americana. And I head towards more of the Copland-esque. I definitely hear that whole American sound from that period in Mary's writing here. The lush, it is lush American, and it's a very much more open sound.
Right, it's very robust sounding. Yeah.
Yes.
That was Chuck's comment within Greg's comment. So very cool. Yeah, I mean, I love the sound world that you're creating here. It sort of seems to harken back historically to the time period, but it also feels very operatic and grand at the same time. Is the orchestrating we're hearing, is that the final orchestration, or is this a smaller, experimental first?
Well, this is the first full orchestra that we did the workshop for production, which was the original. It was only 7 pieces. So for this, it was chamber orchestra.
Right, and is that the final size of the piece?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. And what are your plans for this piece?
Well, we want to tighten it, probably, do a little tweaking here and there, shorten it because it's
an hour and a half now.
Cut it a little bit. Yeah. We can cut a little bit of it, and we want to be able to produce it. It's small enough to go to several different companies and even maybe some schools. But I think once we have done the reworking it, it will have much more opportunity for performance.
Yeah, it sounds like it would. I mean, it's great that you mentioned schools. Just the idea of also pairing this with an educational, reach out with the students beforehand, the history and stuff. I think this would be a real great way to get into these kind of stories.
Especially because the voting rights has become such a critical issue in our country right now, that Fannie Lou was one of the ones who made it possible for the Voting Rights Act to be passed back in 1965. And people forget that people fought and died to get those voting rights, and now they're being sort of erased by, people are trying to impose new poll taxes and new voter requirements. So actually the fight that Fannie Lou was fighting 50 years ago has come back again full force.
Yeah, I know. It doesn't seem like the clock keeps going in circles. Like we're back at some other weird time period right now.
Yeah.
It's very bizarre.
It's bizarre. You should look into Oberlin College and Conservatory. I bet they would be interested in performing this. They have a really strong civil rights history, and they're interested in new opera about those issues and that period, and so you should look into that.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being on our show. This was such a delight.
Since our recording, Mary D. Watkins was featured in an Opera America Meet the Composer video on February 24th, 2021. Whitesnake Projects commissioned Mary to compose one of the scenes for their 70-minute opera, Death by Life, that explored the impact of life imprisonment on specific inmates and their family members. It was presented online in May 2021. Emmett Till, the opera, was presented in March 2022 at John Jay College, Gerald W. Lynch Theater. And Martha Richards continues her works as president of Women Arts, co-founder of Swan Day / Support Women Artists Now Day, a new international holiday to raise the visibility of women artists. There were over 2,000 Swan events in 36 countries from 2008 to 2020. Most events for 2020 and 2021 were presented online. For March 2022, most events were presented live.
And I want to thank all the composers and librettists. Thank you so much for sharing your COVID evening with us. And we'll see everyone next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your awards.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed our show. Please give us a thumbs up, consider subscribing to our YouTube channel or audio podcast feed on Apple Podcasts. And if you have any comments, suggestions, or feedback of any kind, please let us know by emailing us at comments@indieopera.com. Help us to make the future of opera brighter and bolder with a tax-deductible gift today. Donate to the Indie Opera Podcast on our website, Facebook, or on Patreon for special benefits. We would like to thank Lisa Bielawa, Claire Solomon, Mary D. Watkins, Milica Paranosic, Cheri Magid, Johanny Novarro, Jose Felix Gomez for their patience and being on our show. This episode of the Indie Opera Podcast was recorded on Zoom with co-hosts Walker Lewis, Brooke Larimer, and Peter Zepp. Our show is created with the support of associate producer Chuck Sachs, Ashley Renee Watkins, co-host, Jonathan Blaylock, PR consultant, Gregory Mumji, web correspondent, and Rosha Krian, our theme song creator. This episode was edited by Peter Zepp. Thanks for watching.